More duct tape. What the hell? Oh, crap. Well, it looks like I just figured out why these seats aren't adjusting properly. Welcome back to the shop. I'm Jason. Today we are going to be tackling a fairly simple repair and super common on E39, E38s. That's the dreaded seat twist. See, as I try to recline this seat, I'm just falling backwards to the left because the right side's not moving at all. We're going to tackle this project outside the car because honestly, I need this seat out of the way to tackle another stupid thing on this car. Let's work on getting this seat on the workbench and I'll show you what exactly it is we need to fix. First thing we need to do before we take the seat out of the car is we need to try to straighten it out. Now there are two different seat motors in here that tend to have issues. This seat only has an issue with the recline. So what I'm gonna do is I have to incline it until it feels straight. And I think the driver's seat was fixed previously and it might have been fixed slightly askew. So I might wind up taking that one out at a later date and reorienting it. For now, this one feels, let's see, pretty good about right here. So now we need to get it set up to get out of the car. So once our seat is straight and we've got it figured out as far as our tilt, a couple adjustments you want to make. First adjustment, you want to put the headrest all the way down. Next adjustment we want to do is we want to lift the seat all the way up. This is going to give us the most access to the motors underneath, assuming these functions all work properly. With the seat up and back, our first task are our front bolts. These are a T50. You can choose to take these plastic rail caps off or not. They aren't in the way here. There is a decent chance of them breaking. However, when you go to pull the seat out of the car, or in this case, this one over here is missing. Now, interesting note, these bolts come with Loctite on them and they're supposed to be replaced. You can choose to reinstall them with new Loctite, get new bolts, or just reinstall and torque them. This guy's making a fair bit of noise. Clean all those tracks while we're in there too. On the back side, you will be pulling the plastic trim in order to access the bolt. This is our plastic rail cap. There's one on both sides, and then our bolt is right underneath. I pry this little front piece up, and then I try to work both sides back as much as I can together, popping these little tabs, trying not to break it. Yeah, once one tab breaks, the whole thing comes apart a lot easier. It's also a lot easier when you're not on the other side of the vehicle trying to do this. Where the camera? Oh man, you can't even see this one. Same story, unbolt. Man, looks like coffee or something got spilled under here. Gonna have to get the wet back out. Well, that bolt has definitely been in there before. Threads are a little jacked up, that's why it was coming out funny. Somebody's had the seat in and out before. Just totally not a surprise for a vehicle this age. Okay, now we need to push the seat with the motors back so that the seat rail is in between both sides. And then we'll tilt it up and we'll get to the stuff we need underneath. But first, while we're back here, we're gonna get the seat belt unbolted as well. Okay, two more things before we can pull the seat out. Like I said, we're gonna drive it back so that it's in the middle of the rails. That will help to protect us from as much damage as possible from these things grabbing on the dash or the door panel or anything in between. Now we can tilt the seat up and we're gonna get the seat belt extender. There's a cable that runs down. So as the seat goes forward and backwards, it drives the seat belt assembly up and down automatically. Incline the seat a whole bunch here so that it would tilt back and stay on its own, but obviously in this case we can't do that. There's our adjuster right there. We're gonna grab that tab on the back, flip it around, and then this thing will come apart. There's our tab. Hook tool works really well through the middle. Now it comes out the side. You see this guy here. And then here's our cable. Now to disconnect our seat harness, this tab here slides out all the way. You can see the harness pops right out. Now the seat is completely free. Before I take the seat out of the car, I need to prep somewhere to put it, as well as throw a blanket over the door panel and right here, just in case. I have all these moving blankets that I like to use because I move a lot, and they're a nice thick cover. Back at the shop, I used to use fender covers, which were thinner, but gave you some level of protection. And I actually go about taking these seats out different than a lot of people that I've seen. What I like to do is I like to tilt the seat this way so that the backrest is coming out the back door, and then I'll grab it and I'll rotate it out in an L fashion, like obviously the seat is shaped. And then it's gonna go on my welding table, since if I recall correctly, these seats weigh about 65 or 70 pounds. I weighed the old seats as they came out of the M5 when I was doing all of that stuff. So they are heavy. Watch your back. I do have a bad back, which always makes this fun. I like to extend the front part of the seat here. Gives me somewhere solid to grab onto. And then on the backrest, I'm just grabbing right around it and holding tight. Now I've got a hold here, I've got a hold there. I'm braced on my knees so that the seat's not gonna fall. And then as I'm backing up, I'm closing the door with my butt, get it out of the way. I can toss the seat up on my bench. So with the seat out and on its back, we can start addressing where our problem is. The two motors in question are right up here underneath the front thigh support of the seat. Why is there duct tape under here? That's weird. Okay. So coming out of the two motors are the adjustment cables. And what happens is on the adjustment cables, there's a plastic exterior sheath. That sheath, it's more duct tape. What the hell? Oh, crap. Well, it looks like I just figured out why these seats aren't adjusting properly. Get in here, get in here. It looks like somebody came in here and tried to adjust this on their own, and they cut the cable to shorten it. So this plastic outside piece is what kind of stretches and gets too long. The steel cable doesn't stretch. All right, so then what's going on with the duct tape up here? Crap, they did the same thing up here. Well, finding this problem means we're gonna have to go about this a little bit differently than we would have otherwise. Usually what you would do is you would disconnect the cable sheath out of the motor, you'd pull the end steel piece off using heat, shorten the cable, squish that baby back on with some heat, problem solved. Looks like somebody went about this in a totally different way, so I guess we'll have to do the same, a little bit different, to solve this problem in place. To start, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and just unbolt these two motors. We have 8 millimeters. There are two 8mm screws on both sides of each motor, top and bottom. Once these are out, we can better assess our situation here and how we're going to fix it. It might be easier to just pull this side cover off to get to all these screws, pull the leather off of the side. I might just pull the whole seat base leather off at this point. Darn it. Well, this will make cleaning easier. The seatbelt side trim, there's two T30 screws on the front. So then you just have the little plastic tab on the back, at the front, one screw and one screw. I am kind of surprised that these little plastic guys in the back are still in place. So these guys are a common break point, people trying to get the little wing tab off. With that out of the way, we'll have more access to the side of our motors. We'll peel this leather back as well. There's little tabs here. You have to bend them back or stretch the leather. I'm choosing to bend the tabs because the leather is pretty hard and brittle. Doesn't feel like it's got a lot of stretch in it. Right back inside there. just on this side. The other side, I still have to get access to that side there. Okay, we have the 4 little screws out of this side. Oh, there's one of our problems. Put that cable back on just to cry about that later, but there's that one. Cable's definitely not sticking out far enough. There's our duct tape masterpiece. Man, that thing got mangled. Both sides of it's mangled. Get this side out. Okay, this one doesn't appear that it's been cut. That's good. A little rubber seal. It's dead inside the cable. We're just going to take that out for now. So on the end of your cable is a square drive. If your cable is completely jacked up, this one's a little jacked up, that square drive is going to be the problem. If it's messed up, you will have to replace it. So here's how I'm going to fix this. This fuel hose, this is 8x13, BMW fuel hose, fits really snugly over top of the cable sheath. So what I'll do is I'll cut all these guys nice and smooth, put the hose over it with a set of hose clamps, and lock that baby in place. Hopefully doing that will keep these from coming back apart and solve our issue for now. Looking at the seat, it doesn't quite look like I got it straight. And when I look at the gears down here at the bottom, it looks to me like I need to go a little bit further on this side, without hitting my head, to get the seat even from side to side. So I'm gonna see if I can adjust that manually with the cable and a screwdriver, or not a screwdriver so much as, it looks like I can, the gear drive is so strong I can do it with my fingers, except this is adjusting a different gear. So down inside the seat here, to get everything even, I'm gonna count the teeth on my gears there and there on both sides, get all of them even, and adjust these cables by hand, because I can turn it and the seat is moving, and I'll get everything straightened out. All right, I think I have the seat all adjusted. I squirted a little bit of silicone lube down each one of the tubes. And then I also went and I cleaned all of the tubes with acetone to try to get them as clean and dry as possible. I then cut some 2-inch sections of hose. I marked my tubes at 1 inch so I would know my insertion depth on all of them to try to keep it even. And these are a tight fit, I tell you what. I don't think these are gonna pull apart this time. Boy, an inch is actually a lot to try to squeeze on there.
Well, that's not what she said.
Then what I'm gonna do is hose clamp to keep them in place. I gotta make sure I get this, so it's not gonna be pinching anything. Same thing on this side. I wanna go ahead and measure 1 inch so that I'm not shortening the cable on accident. So now we should be tied together. I mean, even without a hose clamp, that feels really, really snug. That was why I went ahead and I cleaned everything with acetone. Tried to make sure we had a nice, simple surface to grab onto here. So this is gonna be our upper cable. I wanna put these hose clamps in a location that I don't think they're gonna be touching anything. I think right on the bottom should be fine. I am using the crimp clamps, because this is what I have, and I have the tool. You can see there's a bit more cable sticking out here. What I wanna do is I wanna test that this goes into the motor okay, and there's not too much cable. All right, that seems like that was good. Also, make sure that your cable is installed on the other side. What I did was I counted the gear teeth on both sides. I marked them with my whiteout pin, and then I'm just lining them up to the seat frame, hoping that the seat frame is symmetrical on both sides. You know, that would be important here. Now our lower cable, Got these things all mixed up. Gotta find the right one. That's this guy. Do the same thing. Then we'll test everything out here on the bench before we go back into the car. And I'll show you what I'm gonna do for that. This cable needs to be run up and over top of this seat bar here. Otherwise, when it lowers down, you're gonna wind up just pulling the cable out. Before we put everything back together, we want to bench test the seat. There are a couple of ways that we could go about doing this. Down here on the seat connector, pin 5 is power and pin 6 is ground. And all you need is a 12-volt source. You can use a power supply or a little battery, or in my case, I'm gonna be using my M12 Milwaukee battery. And I happen to have the ends of my seat harnesses from my M5 when I stripped it, so I just have the power and ground here with easy access. So what I'm gonna do is I'll plug this guy in, and then I'm gonna connect to my battery with a little fused harness that I made. Now the fuse to this is normally a 30 amp. I'm using a 15 amp just to make sure, one, I'm protecting my battery a little bit, and two, I'm protecting all the wiring here. And then on my positive side, I'm using an alligator clip so that instead of, pushing it together with a spade, if something were to go wrong, I could just unclip it much easier, I felt like. So let's check our backrest first. Both sides of that's working nicely. Tilt. And this is the other motor that usually goes awry here. The cables bend on this one, and you'll get one side coming up and the other side not. So it looks like in this case, everything is working really nicely. So while I have the seat out of the car, I'm gonna do a couple of things. I'm gonna get it all adjusted. I'm gonna tilt the back a little further, get this guy up. I'll get my seat tracks off down here, and I'm gonna run it back and forth, and I'm gonna clean the tracks out because they are disgusting. I already shot a bunch of air through here and whatnot. Lube everything up, and then I'm gonna treat the leather while it's out of the car because that just is a lot easier. And then I can climb around inside the car and clean as well. For cleaning duties, I've got a mixture of dihydrogen monoxide for the seats and my Lexol leather cleaner. And I'm just gonna scrub this thoroughly with my leather brush here. And we're gonna wipe all this off, let it dry, and then we'll treat it with our Lexol leather treatment as well, just like we were doing on the rear door panels. We're not gonna restore this leather by any means by doing this, but we should bring some of the character and luster back to it. They do have a little bit of shine right now, and they are quite firm, or the leather is quite firm, which tells me it could use a little bit of moisturizer. Now, mind you, I am not a detail professional by any means. I cut and buff and do everything myself in an effort to learn, much like many of you do. So if you see me doing something wrong here, let me know, I'll fix it. Went ahead and left this side trim panel off here by the seatbelt so I could scrub around there. The seats are actually really clean. I'm not pulling a bunch of dirt off or anything. My X5, Project Cheapskate, I was cleaning the back seats on that. Ew, it was gross. Like, wow, so dirty. I mean, I was pulling chicken fingers out of the seats and out of the doors and French fries and pretzels, and I mean, you kind of expect that from a family wagon, but ew. This is so much better. A little bit of coffee staining on the side bolster. That's livable. For the leather conditioner, what I use is just a foam pad. This was, I don't know, it came with some leather conditioner. I got it at some point. Did I forget to open this one? Yep. Just finished my other one. Boy, this guy might need 2 treatments. It's soaking this stuff right up. When I take the driver's seat out, I plan to add a little bit of extra foam padding here in the lumbar area since these seats don't have lumbar. At least until I figure out if I'm gonna try to find a set of E38 comfort sport seats or maybe even a set of M5 seats just for funsies. Okay, now we let it dry and it says to wipe off any excess that remains after drying. And in my case, if it all absorbs in, I'll probably put at least 1 more coat on here. I can get the back seat done. All right, seat's all cleaned up, all put back together. We're ready to go in. While I had the seat out, I went ahead and I used a thread chase inside the car because one of those bolts was a little wacky, and I went ahead and tapped all 4 of the bolts just to clean them up. The one bolt that had the cross thread on it, I fixed that. And I cleaned up in here really well. I scrubbed brush, used my liquid extractor, and I would say it looks pretty good. So now we have to, let's see, headrest has to go in first, so I'm gonna rotate my work table here. And it's a rinse and repeat. We're gonna tilt the seat over and tip it in. Tilt it over, tip it in. Don't hit anything, okay. The don't hit anything is probably the most important part. So balancing on my leg and gentle, get past the dash and back and in. Bam! All right, we got to tilt it up so that we can get our seatbelt extender put back on. Then we'll connect the harness and we'll start torquing it down. There's our cable. Whoop, you can see where it's attached back there. If you forget to put that on, the seat won't go, or the seatbelt won't go up and down automatically. All right, our seat bolts are 45 Newton meters and then 90 degrees. Our seat belt to the seat was 34 Newton meters. I'll throw it up on screen just to make sure. I'm gonna get the alignment dowels in place. There we go. And we're gonna get the rear bolts down and almost torqued. We're not gonna torque the rear. We'll slide the front, or slide the seat back, then we'll torque the front, then we'll come back and torque the rear. Usually these bolts get stripped when somebody puts one bolt in super tight, then they try to put the next one, then they try to put the next one, then they try to put the next one. They all have a little bit of movement, but if the seat's not in the right spot like that right there, that bolt tried to go in sideways. Back that off. We're gonna take a peek at it, make sure it's okay. And we're gonna slide her around some more until we can get this guy to go down in there nice and straight. Okay, I'll back that off. I want the seat to be able to move still. I will put the seat belt in. All right, play the dance. Go back to the front. Not knocking the camera over. Now we can get to these bolts pretty easy. Click, click. Okay, I'll click, click the back, and then we'll be just about done. Well, these are the repairs that feel good. Now, I understand that you might not have all of these supplies at your disposal. The fuel line I've had for a long time. I had some of it left over from a project on my buddy's Fairlane. Check out those videos down below. The hose clamps, well, I have hose clamps because I work on cars, so occasionally you need those types of things. Free, fantastic. Labor, well, that's priceless, right? Knowing how to do it, same thing. That's why you're here. So let's do this one together. Passenger seat twist, bam, off the list. That feels really good. I'm super excited to be able to actually get a passenger in here and get everything maneuvered. The seat had to be leaned back, kind of gangster style, which meant having somebody sit in the back seat was pretty implausible. So now we'll get a little bit more use out of the car and have a bit more fun. Appreciate you watching. Like, subscribe, comment, tell me what you might have done different. I look forward to seeing you in the next one. Opa!